Okay, welcome everybody to number 117. I'm going to let my live viewers catch up here for a minute. Hello, Jennifer Robinson. I can see you there. It's great to have you. Apologize for the late start. Even episode 117, I still can end up being victim to running out of time at the last minute, so I was really running around trying to get the microphone hooked up and make sure that I was remembering everything, and hopefully I did. I guess we'll see here in a moment. But I can see you all connected. I can see your comments. It's great to have you. Heather Jackson made it. Oh, that's great, Heather. We're in the second arrondissement today. As you can see, we're starting out with Mozart. In fact, I gotta come clean because I originally entitled this episode Mozart and Mozzarella because I was going to start with Mozart and finish with a very hip, modern mozzarella bar. But I just checked and the mozzarella bar is gone. It's been turned into a pizza parlor. And I think that it may have gone the way of the pandemic, sadly, this business. So they're no longer, the mozzarella is no longer there and therefore no longer part of this episode. So I'm going to have to retitle this one. It's going to have to be Mozart and something else. I don't know. So why don't we just get started? I think folks have had enough time to start. Again, I'll remind you that if you are watching live, you can help support this project by using the super chat function in YouTube. Otherwise, my PayPal info is in the description, as well as my Patreon info and my merch store and stuff like that, as usual. So why don't we get started? We're looking at the Rue du Sentier, very close to the Sentier metro station. Second arrondissement, center of town. And I've been wanting to show you this address for a while. As you can see, it's quite a sizable building. Most likely not the original building from Mozart's period, but you can see the history of it is still very much embedded in the fact that they call this building Maison Mozart. Perhaps you can't see, maybe I'll zoom in a little bit for those who want to read it. But it says Mozart and his mother, and we're going to talk about that, stayed here in 1778. In fact, they would spend 7 months, the two of them, at this address. And for those of you who can read French, you would have already surmised a little bit of what this story entails. Why don't we go really wide angle here? A little bit like that. So, this is a very intriguing story. Mozart, just to give you the background, he came to Paris twice. Once when he was 7 years old, and he was a child prodigy and blowing everybody away. At that time, when he was 7, he stayed at the Hôtel de Beauvais in the Marais, which I know a lot of you are aware of that building and love that building. It's part of my tour of the Marais, my walking tour. That was when he was 7, and then he came back one more time when he was 22 years old. And as I mentioned, he came here with his mother. And the idea was the two of them to go on this multi-city tour to garner work for Mozart and also secure his social standing, because that was very important for a composer's career, just to go around and rub elbows and make connections and hopefully drum up some work. But he didn't have that golden reputation that we think of nowadays, so it was actually very hard for Mozart to gain a lot of traction during that long voyage with his mom. And so in some respects it was considered a failure, this trip. And Mozart wasn't quite satisfied and didn't think that people were giving him enough chances, enough breaks. Perhaps because of that, they were short on funds, and so by the time Mozart and his mother moved here for 7 months in 1778, they had to get an apartment here that was pretty crummy and run down, and it was cold and drafty, and maybe because of that, Mozart's mother fell ill and died here at this spot. She was only 57 years old. Imagine that, traveling with your mother, and she passes away. He was only 22 at the time, as I mentioned. So it was the first time that Mozart had ever witnessed someone dying, and it was the first time he had certainly ever been left to his own devices and left alone in a foreign country, no less. And so it really left, quite a mark on him, obviously, a lasting impression. So they took his mom, had a mustache, which is by Léal. Many of you know it. And then she would be buried in the local cemetery there. But what's interesting is that happened to be a July 4th, 1778. And because of that, on the same very day that Mozart was burying his mother in Paris, John Adams and Ben Franklin were here in Paris, and they were hosting on that same day of the funeral, happened to be hosting the the first ever celebration in Europe of the American independence, July 4th. So that must have been an interesting dichotomy if you take your mind back to that day, 1778. In one part of Paris, Mozart is attending his mother's funeral, and somewhere across town, Ben Franklin and John Adams are partying it up for the independence of America. Very interesting how history can play out like that. Yesenia says, epic fail vacation for Mozart. Incidentally, when Mozart's mom was buried in the local cemetery in the center of Paris, she exhumed from the ground and sent to the catacombs. So that's where Mozart's mom is, among the 6 million skeletons underground. Now, to finish up the story, what's most fascinating, what I love about it, is there's essentially a soundtrack to this story that I just told you. It's because as he's watching his mom die, he is composing music. And notably, he composed during this period something called the Piano Sonata in A minor. If any of you are at all interested in classical music, I highly recommend you check out this piece of music. He completed it just 3 days after his mother passed away. And it is very interesting to listen to the music and see if you can find signs or signals of what was happening in his personal life. And to tell you, if you want to write this down, it's the Piano Sonata in A minor, and the catalog number is K310. That could help you find it, K310. And what was interesting about that piece, especially the first movement, it's considered by a lot of people to be his first tragic composition. And it's very dynamic and more dramatic than his previous works, which would sort of make sense, I guess. And even considered to be moving towards more of a Beethoven-like intensity, with emotional dissonant harmonies, which is very rare for the period. I popped through here one day. This happened to be open, and it's a courtyard, a very modern courtyard, and in fact, it houses today a architecture firm. So those are architecture offices up there. Again, if you're interested, Mozart not only composed during his stay in Paris that piano sonata, but also something called the Paris Symphony that was performed twice in Paris while he was here. Likely with him conducting. And also he composed a concerto for flute and harp. And to finish up, Mozart never fell in love with the city. He found 18th century Paris to be rather dirty and dangerous, and the French audiences never really fully embraced him. And add to that the memory of his mom's passing here, and so it's easy to see why he never returned. Just those 2 stays in Paris, and then he called it quits. He did love, however, Parisian fashion. And he loved fashion in general, and often would make himself broke and put himself in debt just buying fancy clothes because he loved that so much. And so when he would wear those red jackets, like the red jacket he's wearing on the thumbnail of this video that I used, that was at the time considered a very Parisian fashion. The red jacket, especially with the black buttons. So I think that's about it. We're going to turn and head down the street called the Rue du Croissant. Yummy, yummy. Thanks, Peggy, for helping people get a link to that sonata. I really, really love it. And to think that he was literally writing it. His mom, her medieval feel to it. Usually when a street is named Croissant, it tends to mean that it's a moon shape, but it's not the case here. Apparently there was an old shop sign that happened to be 12, where a lot of the streets weren't even named. It was linked to there happened to be in the shape of a croissant. Also because there's a cute little window here, and it gives us a glimpse into what may be very charming. And I want to get moving because I think that I might not have a lot of good signal on this street. So it might be buffering. like that. Yeah, sorry folks, if it's buffering a little bit, it's just because I don't have a bit of a dead zone. L'imprimerie de la presse, so the printer of the press. Beautiful. For those of you who are getting a pretty good connection live, feel free to pop this one into 1080p resolution. Corbel. Riding a bike around. This place is called the Bistrot du Croissant, and there's another historical nugget related to this one. There was a famous Frenchman called Jean Jaurès. He was a famous anti-war diplomat and strongly opposed to the politics of French leadership that seemed to be leading France toward World War I. And he was very vocal and adamant about trying to, through diplomacy, convince these European leaders to not start World War I. And he would often eat here at this very Bistro Jean Jaurès, and it would make sense because this happened to be the hub in Paris of the press and journalism and newspaper printing and whatnot. So a lot of journalists, politicians would hang out here on this corner bistro. And sadly, it was July 1914, just before the start of World War I, and Jean Jaurès was sitting here eating his dinner one night, and he was actually finishing up his dessert. They say it was a tarte aux fraises, a strawberry tart. And sadly, an assassin came up behind Jaurès and shot him in the back twice, killing him here in this restaurant. And in a sort of a cruel twist of irony, the assassin's name happened to be Raoul Villain, and villain is the French word for villain. So this guy, his last name was literally villain. So shoots Jaurès in cold blood behind his back, and Europe was absolutely rattled by this murder. And it really caused a lot of upheaval in the French government. What's wild and quite sad is Jean Jaurès was scheduled just a few days later. He was meant to be at a summit, at a conference, where he was going to give his final push for convincing the leaders of Europe to find an alternative to starting World War I. And it begs the question, if he had not been assassinated here in 1914, would he have had enough time to perhaps pull that off and to avert war in some way? Still today, if you go inside this bistro, and by the way, if you didn't know, there's a football match, there's a soccer game going on, which is why a lot of these places are totally packed and they're all watching the TV screen. But there's a little mini altar in here if you go, and you'll see there's newspaper clippings and a little bust of Jean Jaurès. So his spirit lives on, for sure. He happened to, later, his body was moved to the Pantheon, which he is, where he is today. So that's the story of Jean Jaurès. Also worth noting is this beautiful bit of architecture here. In fact, let me turn around just a little bit to give you a closer look, because these caryatids are dynamite. Look at that. Oh man. Get a nice screen full of those babies. Yes. I see some people saying they're also watching the match at the same time. Cool. Okay, let me make a quick little turn around here. Ooh, I can hear the crowds going wild, almost on every street corner. This is a Chamber of Commerce building with a big old piece of stained glass that must look beautiful from inside, I imagine. And some of you will recognize right away La Bourse, the former stock exchange building under Napoleon. Pretty quiet building on the weekends for obvious reasons, although it's not even a stock exchange anymore. But here's the other side of the Chamber of Commerce. What I wanted to point out here, though, even more so, was it always tickles me when I find a little bit of Art Deco, because we have so much Art Nouveau in town, but the Art Deco is it's more sort of fewer and farther between, so to speak. So this is just a little, and it's always, rather understated. But I can see actually on the side the date of this building, it's from 1930, so it puts us right smack in the middle of Art Deco. And here we get the classic sign of Mercury, snakes in the staff, originally the symbol of commerce. It's crazy how prevalent that symbol is around central Paris, where all the finance was. But this second arrondissement was really for many years the hub of money. It was the Wall Street of the capital. That's a fun view. Thanks, David Dubois. Appreciate that. By the way, let me remind you, if you didn't already know, that I will be following this tour with a private cafe chat for my Patreon supporters. And my guests are going to be live, actual real life people for my cafe chat. It's going to be the first time since the pandemic, so exciting stuff. Hope a lot of you can join us for that. This is a pretty sexy building. It's a restaurant called the Hollywood Savoy. And you can see absolutely stunning. Hey, Janet Hoover, I can see you there. It's great to have you. Laura Poffenberger's around. Oh, while we're zoomed in. Next floor is great. You don't see columns like this, pillars like this very often. So that is just absolutely delectable. And that sign says that there are offices to rent. And then the next level up too has its own decoration. It's just, for over 100 episodes I've been showing you all these bits and pieces of architecture, and it's still, first of all, it never gets old, and second of all, I never run out of new stuff to show you. It's really insane. So we'll do a slow and steady flyby of the Bourse. Owned by the city now, so they do galas in there and city type events and art exhibits and whatnot. We're approaching the Rue Montorgueil, and whenever you're on Rue Montorgueil, you really got to check out as much as possible. Keep your eyes peeled for all the architecture, because it is considered one of the great showcases of a certain period of French architecture, and each architect was trying to outdo the last. So it's all about flourishes in every building. Across the street too. Thank you, Sandra Hendricks. I appreciate the support. Now I gotta show you this place. When I was planning out this itinerary, I realized I needed to show this bistro. It's called the Pré au Mur, and I don't know if any of you will remember, but I once did a cafe chat with my Patreon supporters, and I went back and I rewatched it because it was March 7th of 2020. And obviously, March of 2020, you all know what was starting to happen. So I went and I rewatched the cafe chat I did here, and someone, of course, asked me about, what do you think about this new virus that's going around? It was kind of this new, rather crazy, novel idea that everyone was curious about and seeing how it was going to play out. It was obviously the very early days, March of last year. And so I watched myself on camera saying, yeah, apparently it seems real, but so far France doesn't seem, too panicked about it. Everything's still open, our schools are open, and I thought maybe it was going to be a goal. And so I also said on camera, thanks, Billy, for the super chat. I appreciate it. That girl is giving thumbs up to even the bus drivers. That's hilarious. Okay, so just to finish my little spiel, I was talking about, there's 20 new cases of the virus in France, and at the time that seemed so huge, and nowadays we'd love to have only 20 cases, right? So it was just an interesting thing to watch, and it made me realize I wanted to include this today because it really brings us full circle, because here we are, Paris is reopening. It was 15 months ago, and it's wild to think of what we've gone through since that time. And the fact that I said I'm soon, in a few moments, going to be doing a cafe chat with actual real life people, which is wild. I would have never expected that. Anyway, we're going to let the traffic pass here and head down that street. Feels like it might rain a little bit. Oh, thanks, Sharon Peterson. She says this is such fun. I feel like I'm losing my voice, though. I've had to yell over a lot of traffic today. Hopefully Phyllis Cartwright will have some sort of beverage to wet my whistle when I get to her place. We're going to do it in their Airbnb. It's a cute little spot. It's a jewelry shop. I just realized I'm a bit zoomed in. There we go. So it definitely feels like a little slice of back to normal. Oh, I wanted to show you this door, I forgot. This is a beauty. We've got some cherub type dudes here. If you can see that, two of them. Beautiful door. You know me, any tour can become a door tour at the drop of a hat. Give her the old once over. Beautiful. Oh, the color of that wood and the iron go so well together. Here's another nice door, number 5. And it is the door of one of the buildings of the National Guard. If I can zoom out for you. I don't want to get my equipment in the shot, but look at that beauty. Oh, yes. Looks pretty fortified, doesn't it? Just so elegant. Let me get across the street so we can see a little bit more of it. This building in general. I wouldn't be surprised if some policeman stuck his head out the window and said, "No filming." If you heard that bell, that's because we're coming up on a church. Church that I'm very fond of, called Notre-Dame des Victoires. And I love the little square in front of this church, which we'll certainly stop to enjoy. It's the back of it. Wow, very quiet street. Thank you, Laura Mirles. Oh, Laura, that reminds me, I sent you a Facebook message, so please check your Facebook account. There was something I wanted to square up with you, and I'm not sure if you've replied yet, so I'll use this opportunity to remind you to check your inbox in Facebook. Thank you, Elaine, I appreciate it. All right, so this is the square in front of ... Notre-Dame des Victoires, Our Lady of the Victories, and we are very close to the Place des Victoires. Oh, I get the crucifix in there. It's beautiful. This church was begun in 1629 as a promise from King Louis XIII to the Virgin Mary. He said to Mary, he was praying during a war where he was fighting the Protestants, he said, "If you bring me victory against these Protestants, then I will promise to build you a church in your honor in the center of Paris," and that's what happened. So it's Our Lady of Victories. Coincidentally, when Mozart was staying here, 1778, he frequented this church quite often to pray. And I often wonder, I've never found direct evidence of this, but I wonder if he had even come here to pray for his dying mother at the time. He may have walked right through that door. Thanks so much, Peggy Baker, for the support. I appreciate you. This church also happens to be linked to another famous composer by the name of Lully, L-U-L-L-Y, and he was the court composer for Louis XIV. And he was originally buried and has a beautiful tomb that's still there, even though his body has been since removed. But Lully's tomb is there in a beautiful chapel in honor of him. So there you go. That's another bit of classical music you can check out. Mr. Lully, Jean-Baptiste, I believe his name is. This is also the church we won't go in today, but this is the church that happens to be famous for having 37,000 marble plaques, all with inscriptions carved into them. And they're called ex-votos, an ex-voto. I've mentioned this before in previous episodes. It's essentially a way for the church to allow parishioners to give an official thank you or acknowledgement to Christ or Virgin Mary or a saint. And the message gets etched in a marble plaque and glued to the wall, like literally stuck to the walls. So this one happens to have, this church has the most of all the Parisian churches, those marble messages of thanks known as an ex-voto. Thanks, Pam Moore. I appreciate the support. Let me give you an idea of... Oh, this is fun too. I may have shown you this before at another time, but there are windows all around this corner, but if you see these ones to the left, they happen to be fake. Those are trompe-l'oeil windows. Can you see that? Real one is on the right, and the fake one's on the left, just painted directly on. I always like that detail. And the square is fabulous for lots of reasons. It's very chill, you know, it's very well secluded, the square. I like a square that doesn't get too much foot traffic. And you can actually hear yourself think. On the opposite side, nowadays it's a tea shop, it's Dames & Frères, which is very good. But it used to be, up until a few years ago, it used to be a place where you could buy religious memorabilia and books and whatnot. And so for that reason, you can see there's still the niche up there with beautiful Mary and Christ, rather. And I think that's a nice little touch and a reminder that before it was a tea store, it was selling religious objects. Thanks, Ellen Cordini. I appreciate the support. She says, "This is great, Corey, despite no mozzarella." Yeah, if you're just joining live, I'm going to have to probably change the name of this tour because the mozzarella bar I wanted to show is no longer there, perhaps a victim of the pandemic. And thanks to Ginny, too. Ginny says, "I miss Paris so much. Thank you for these virtual tours." You're welcome, Ginny. Even if I happen to be losing my voice, apparently. Speaking of Mary, she's all around, because look at this place next door. To be honest, truth be told, I didn't even plan to show you this one, but I caught it out of the corner of my eye. This beautiful artistry all around, all around, all around. And I don't know what's going on here, but this building has a fun, almost like a medieval castle type of feel. I guess technically those are corbels, just like the others that we've been admiring. And that way, to give you your bearings, is the Galerie Vivienne, just right down that street. One more look at the church, full view. If anyone can think of another M word, starting with M, that we've seen on this tour today, because you know I love my alliteration, I'm addicted to it. It can be Mozart and blank. So if you got any ideas, throw them in the comments. I like this little building here too. And it's just got this solitary bench, a woman smoking a cigarette. Here we go, this is the store. I guess there still is a store, an existing store selling those religious items. So I guess that store is still around. This says since 1850. And then I'm going to take us past a bakery slash cafe that is just a dynamite. I love it, I love it, I love it. Right across from the square. And you can sit out on one of these tables and sip your café crème and just admire the church. It's really one of the best spots in central Paris. Not too crazy. This is a cute little street. It's called the Rue Montorgueil. I may have mentioned this to you like many, many moons ago, but Montorgueil was an expression of something that would empty your pocket or empty your purse. And it was named that because this tiny little narrow street years and years ago was apparently where you would get pickpocketed nonstop. You know, there's a real problem. You think there's a problem with that nowadays, but there was certainly a big, big problem 100 or 200 years ago where people would just get mugged in broad daylight because these streets were very dark and narrow. So it's still called the pocket emptier street or something similar to that. But what I've always been intrigued by is this. You can see the Revolutionary era hand carved sign, which I love. Usually those come from the mid 1700s, even a little bit earlier, 1730s. But then underneath, I always wondered what was under there, and I just recently found out. It's because during the Revolution, they divided Paris not into Arrondissement, but into sections. And there were 48 sections during that time. And what this says is the section du Mail or section du Maïs. I even asked Charlotte how to pronounce that, but she doesn't know. So she gave me two options. So that black painted version is just telling you what section of the city or what quote unquote arrondissement or district this street was part of during the Revolution. I apologize, I feel like I'm really losing my voice today. Place des Victoires. And I mean, you can't come here and not go around at least one time, so let's do that. I did a full episode on this square a while back, so if you're not familiar with that, you can just go on my YouTube channel and just do a search for Place des Victoires. Oh, look at that. I love framing it there with the buildings. That's one of the best views. Hey, Haas Manning's here. Haas thinks it's beautiful. Make a quick detour down the street to show you something. Wait, is it? No, it's actually the other street. My apologies. Go through a roundabout enough times, you absolutely lose track of which street is which. So for this next one, if any of you are extra sensitive to taxidermied animals, then you may want to look away. But I just wanted to share this shop. It's a little bit like Des Rôles, if you're a fan of Des Rôles, and I cannot, forgive me, I can't remember if I shared this many episodes ago, but because we're in the area, I wanted to show you. It's, can't get my bike up here. So they got all sorts of animals. Butterflies there. And you're free to enter. As long as you walk in and give them a bonjour and a smile and show them that you're friendly. You can absolutely browse around. So everybody talks about Des Rôles for this sort of experience, but this place almost never, ever, ever gets a mention. It's called Design and Nature, or Design et Nature. Thanks, Leslie Wolf. I appreciate it. She says, thank you, Corey. Love the colorful tour. Yeah, I guess colorful might be a good way to put it. Thank you. See if we can peek a little bit through the window. There you go, that gives you the idea. Design and Nature is the name of that place. It looks like an extension of that same shop. Lisa Chorney says, I should call this one Mozart and Football Madness. Let's get off the sidewalk without killing myself. There's a nice door here on the right that I kind of feel like I showed you a long time ago, but it's worth a look. There we go. That's nice, isn't it? Yeah. Worth a stop. Ooh, it's getting really humid now. I think maybe we've got some thunderstorms rolling in. All right, I'm gonna follow the rules and go the long way around instead of cutting through in the wrong direction. This is nice, whatever's happening here. And then I'm a big fan of this brick building. Beautiful. I can hear them singing some kind of chant for the match. I like this bit of greenage on the left here. We're on a street called the Rue d'Argout, and you're going to see in a minute here, straight ahead of us, it gets really cute and hip and trendy and cozy. This building here, it's le chambre syndicale, whatever that might mean. It's really nice. It's great how that corner building culminates in this one beautiful tree. I mean, that is fun. That is a fun view of Paris as the city starts to slowly wake up. Ever so slowly back to the real world. And there are some really hip shops here as well. I'll just give you a quick look. Fashion boutiques and such. This is a wine bar called Maïs. I should show you the street back the other way. It's pretty fun. Got another shop there. It looks like it's candles and other things. Yeah, bougie. Awesome coffee. This Mata is considered one of the one of the great specialty coffee addresses in the second arrondissement. Another eatery, little ice cream stand. And here we're coming upon the Rue Montmartre, which is roughly parallel, or not quite, but very close to Rue Montorgueil, the same type of vibe, the same type of area. They're and it's got a really more and more, I feel like every year it starts to take on more and more of the character of the Rue Montorgueil. A lot of eateries. Just a parade of people shopping and killing time. The Rue Montmartre. Even though at one point it would have led to that neighborhood. This is a stylish looking lady next to a very stylish looking door. Look at that. This place knows is a perfume store. And it's really nice. Look at it. Beautiful. It's also just nice to see some green, you know? Nice to see the greenery. Cocktail bar. The name of this place on the awning happens to be the name of the street that we're on. Bacoumont, perhaps. This is a hotel by the same name. Nice doorway. With a rather classic lion pelt type of design. And I think in the way of a car here. Back out again. Lori Dean's here. She says, love those awnings. I don't know if you noticed, but it's getting darker now. I really feel like it might dump on us at any minute. If you can make it out there, if you've got a good eye, you can see that same staff of Mercury with the snakes that we talked about. So we know this building was originally meant to serve some sort of commerce-related purpose. If you're into ceviche, which I have to admit I don't know too much about it, this place apparently specializes in it. I'll show you the name there. La Cevicheria? I don't know. I've never been asked to pronounce that word, so give me a break on that one. Speaking of Mercury, also known as Hermes, let me stop for a minute and twist around. Thanks everybody for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's great to have you here. It's a shame it's getting so dark, but I wanted to show you this, the underbelly of this balcony I love. Look at that. Look at the contour of that. So class, so elegant. And then rather distinct markings all the way down. Pretty rare to see that. We're coming up on the end here, and then I'm going to switch to my cafe chat, where my guests will actually be in person, real live cafe chat guests. It's going to be quite a novel idea. This is a passage. It's not a public one though. There's another name that I've never been asked to pronounce. Maybe Ben Ayad. And even though, well, first let me show you this. It's nice. On the side, we've got a beautiful iron line. So it's a private passage, but this first gate happens to be open. Let me get you, there we go. So we can get sort of close. And with any luck, maybe I could pop you over it a little bit. I don't know if that helps or not. There's a man walking his dog, so I don't want to bother him. Like I said, pretty sure it's a private thing, so. And you can see it actually used to continue across, or maybe it was one continuous passage that this perpendicular street eventually bulldozed through, but you can see it's the same passage, same name on the opposite side of the street. Okay, we're going to wrap things up. I mentioned at the start that I wanted to call this tour Mozart and Mozzarella because those were going to be the two bookends of the tour. And it's because for many years there was a mozzarella bar just right here called Mozzato. That blue awning right there, but it's no longer a mozzarella bar, it's a pizza parlor. So technically that's mozzarella, I guess. And maybe the pizza is really phenomenal, who knows? And maybe we'll finish here, get off the bike. Here's a classic spot that hasn't gone away. Au Cru de Bourgogne, that means essentially the wines of Burgundy. And this is a good classic spot. We're right off the Rue Montorgueil, it's just to the left of us. And yeah, you can't go wrong with a place like this. I bet this is a place I haven't eaten here, but I bet you could get a really good duck confit. You could get some snails, get some really good wine. You could probably get like a nice, probably like a cassoulet is the word I was looking for in the wintertime. Stuff like that. Real good, sort of stick to your bones, authentic, rustic bistro food. Thanks, Jennifer Robinson. I appreciate the support. And anybody else who I missed? Oh, I missed Andrea Miles. She says, "Merci, Corey. You made my heart smile today." Thank you so much, Andrea. I appreciate you. And I hope that I'm going to see many of you lovely people during the cafe chat that I'm going to have in just a few minutes with Phyllis Cartwright, Natalie Hayes, her daughter, and Matt, her son. I think all three of them are in an Airbnb not too far from here. And it's going to be my first cafe chat with actual real guests since the pandemic, so that'll be exciting. Okay, everybody, thank you. This was a fun episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Really quite a cross-section of the second arrondissement and all the different flavors and different colors. Even if there's not a whole lot of mozzarella around, I enjoyed sharing this with you. So until next time, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Keep dreaming about Paris. I know a lot of you making plans to go there. Remember, you can, my Patreon info is in the description, as well as my PayPal and my merch and all of that. Merch! My voice is squeaking because it's so blown out. And thanks, everybody. I won't drag it out any longer. Give me a few minutes to set up the cafe chat because I got to go find Phyllis, go into her apartment, set it up, and get ready, hook up to the Wi-Fi and everything. So please be patient over there in our Facebook group, the Cafe Chats group, if you are a Patreon member. And that's it. We'll call this one done. Take care, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day.